Good evening and welcome to our webinar for February. This one is a Back to Basics one, and Jude Hutchinson is going to do some talking for us on hand washing and getting it right. So Jude, if you just want to introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Jude Hutchinson. I'm a director of a company of HSF training, and I do quite a lot of training with regards to food safety and consultancy. One of the things I did with today's presentation was really look at some myths and facts and try to put a bit of facts behind some of it and maybe raise a few questions that get raised in teaching more than anything else. Okay,
that's fine. Fun enough, I've been doing a level 2 food safety this afternoon, so we've had a practical session on hand washing with some of the UV lights, which I've got here, so I'll try and show that later. David.
Good evening, everybody, and a belated Happy New Year. My name is David Newsom. I'm an environmental health practitioner, spending most of my time doing training and policy work in food and health and safety. The last 2 months I've been concentrating on allergen training for enforcement officers, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Jude is going to tell us about hand washing.
Right, okay, so shall we set this thing going then, Jude?
Yeah.
Hopefully this will work.
Yeah.
Let's go and look at back to basics and hand wash. And we're hopefully going to answer a few frequently asked questions that delegates and students on courses will ask at various levels. Without effective hand hygiene, food safety will be compromised. It can lead to, or a lack of hand wash can lead to microbiological contamination, physical contamination if you've got bits on your hands and they're transferred onto the food, even different species of meat maybe, and allergenic contamination and certainly chemical contamination can occur. You need to wash your hands because, apart from anything else, the human gastrointestinal tract will contain over 1 kilo of bacteria. Most of those are natural bacteria that need to be there in order for you to digest your food, etc. But it's absolutely important that you do wash hands because there could well be some pathogenic bacteria in there as well. People may be carriers of food poisoning bacteria, again, either in their guts or on their hands, and also the risk of cross-contamination as we discussed on the previous slide. Often, we tend to try and teach and say that one way to wash hands is the way to do it and everything needs to be the same. In actual fact, really, the actual amount of bacteria that's on your hands, the microflora on the hands, is linked to the nature of your work. And in good situations, this should affect the hand wash methods and the chemical used. So, for example, somebody who's maybe only handling wrapped food is going to need to wash their hands in the same way that somebody who has to work from perhaps raw food to cooked food, etc., and has to touch the two types of foods. And the things that will be affected would be soaps, the types of sanitizers you might use, how often, and also the method used. But one of the first questions, should we be using antimicrobiological soap all the time, or should we just use plain soap? Well, there's been a number of studies, and antimicrobial soap has actually been identified as being marginally more effective than plain soap. However, there are some drawbacks to this, because constant use will has been shown to result in a build-up of antimicrobial compounds on the hands. So you actually end up with something that's got a resistance there. And also, we do know that if you are going to use antimicrobial soap, it definitely works better when hands are heavily contaminated. There's very little difference between using a plain soap and an anti-bac soap if you've just got a small or normal amount of contamination. Therefore, again, the choice of soaps should certainly depend on the nature of the business and also on the product it handles. Next question. Soap or hand sanitizers, or even do we need hand sanitizers at all? Well, again, studies have shown that washing with mild soap and water for 20 seconds is usually more effective than applying a 70% hand sanitizer. So it's definitely better to wash your hands than it is to just use a hand sanitizer. However, if you've got heavy soiling or you want it as an additional area, or you've got some work where you haven't got any soap and water available for some reason, then alcohol-based sanitizers are very effective against gram-negative bacteria as well as gram-positive bacteria. and they're good on lightly soiled hands. So examples of gram-negative bacteria would be Campylobacter. Don't work very well against it. And another consideration to put into place is that where hand sanitisers are used, they most certainly need to be at least 60% alcohol, otherwise they tend not to be effective and you might as well really not use them at all. There is some evidence that non-alcohol based sanitisers, as we've already said, they may cause microbes to develop a resistance to them. And irritates skin than alcohol-based ones. So the message here is that if you are going to use alcohol-based sanitisers of any sort, you really need to make sure you're using alcohol-based ones, because the cheaper non-alcohol-based ones tend not to work as well and may actually really harm workers' hands, which has its own problems when you've started to get flaking skin and sores. Next question, nail brushes. Do we have to have a nail brush? Well, first of all, they're not banned, which is a common myth. A lot of people if they are used effectively, then they're likely to improve hand hygiene and remove the microflora on hands and under nails significantly. So we're not saying that everybody needs a nail brush, but for some jobs we do know that they're very effective to remove certain bacteria. They create more friction and they'll help to penetrate and remove biofilms which may build up under and around nails. And also, a good nail brush used in a high soil situation has been proven to be more effective than using an aggressive soap, remembering obviously that the soaps will eventually again lead to skin complaints, etc. We do use a nail brush, and we'd advise it in places again where you're having to perhaps go from raw food to cooked food on a regular basis, or potentially. Well, the bristles, when you do select a nail brush, the bristles need to be fused and not stapled, because otherwise you can't clean them properly. The bristles need to be of good quality, otherwise they'll bend and they melt, etc. And it's much better, in actual fact, to wash hands in the nail brush in a dishwasher than to stand them in a sanitising solution, because that will eventually become contaminated. Store the nail brushes up, bristles up once they've been used, and the bristles shouldn't be too stiff. In actual fact, it's been found that if you use a good quality nail brush and you rinse it under water and store it bristles up, the likelihood of contamination of that nail brush is negligible. So there's this myth that nail brushes are very dirty, and if you're using the right one, that in effect is actually not true. So for some circumstances, use of a nail brush is a really good thing. The next question, how hot does the water need to be? Do I have to have very, very hot water? And there's a common misconception that the hotter the better, because the idea is that you have it hot enough to kill the bacteria. Well, to kill most bacteria, you're going to be talking about 75 degrees. And if you had that on your hands, you'd have no skin left. You'd have scalded yourself seriously. So the answer is, the water needs to be comfortably hot. We know that some soaps are more effective in warm water, and we know that people are more likely to wash their hands thoroughly if the temperature is comfortable. So if it's too hot or too cold, the chances are people won't put their hands under the running water for long enough to wash them effectively. And the time taken to wash hands and the degree of friction generated is most certainly more important than the actual temperature of the water. So long as it's comfortable, then we would say that that was an acceptable thing. And it's quite important to get it so that it's comfortable and encourage people to wash hands. Last, not quite last, but nearly the last question, does it matter how hands are actually washed? Well, There was an experiment that you can actually see if you look on BBC. It's on the Byte site, and the link's at the bottom of this slide. They worked with Chorleywood to look at somebody who they deliberately contaminated hands in a solution, and then they got the person to not wash their hands at all and put the hands on a petri dish. This led to very dense contamination. Then washed the hands very quickly and saw what happened then with soap and warm water. And what ended up was still a very large colony of bacteria all over their hands, so it was still heavily contaminated. The third way they did it was to thoroughly wash their hands but use no soap. And this had a lot less bacteria than a quick wash, but it was still quite heavily contaminated. And lastly, they washed their hands the way we'd expect people, thoroughly with soap, and took the time, dried properly, and actually we ended up with very few colonies. But it was just what you'd expect on a clean, healthy hand. Paper towels or air dryers. And again, lots of people have lots of ideas about this. Well, again, more studies, and a study that's been done in America has shown that drying with paper towels removes residual pathogens in two ways. First, by friction. So anything that's left will be removed by rubbing it physically off, and also then by wicking excess moisture onto the paper, so any bacteria that's in the moisture around the hands are also removed. So drying with paper towels works very effectively. Drying with a traditional air dryer does remove the moisture, so in the same way, and it will remove some bacteria if you rub your hands under the actual air dryer, but it takes longer, and it may spread bacteria because of the way the air is transmitted out of the actual machine. Nowadays we've also got the air blade type dryers, and these don't disperse the bacteria. They use high velocity, they're quick, and yes, they seem to remove almost as many bacteria, certainly, as the paper towels. So again, it certainly depends on circumstances. I thought we'd finish just with an example method of how to wash your hands without a nail brush. Again, there's a number of different videos that you could have a look at that I found. One's a Camden one on camdenbri.co.uk, and the link's there. And also the FSA Scotland have a very good YouTube video, which first of all shows hand wash being done in slow motion as they talk through it, and then quite quickly to show people about the length of time that they should actually be washing their hands for effective hand wash. Both of these work to basically the same idea though. You need to wet your hands with warm running water, apply enough soap to get a lather, rub all parts of the hands with soap and water, lather vigorously for at least 10 seconds, rubbing all hand surfaces, including the fingertips and thumbs, rinse thoroughly with running water, and then dry hands very thoroughly. And if you do this, then hopefully we're going to remove enough bacteria to make it safe to work. That's what I'm going to talk about today, but I thought maybe on another one we might, or one of the other presenters might look at the actual management of personal hygiene and hand wash, because I think we assume everybody knows how to wash their hands, we assume it's something that people do, but the reality is that it doesn't happen that often. And a study by the FSA in Wales actually showed that 53% of food handlers and 48% of managers couldn't actually demonstrate how to wash hands properly, which sort of leads to thinking that, yeah, we might think we're teaching people well, but we're obviously not getting there quite. And now we'll go on to some more discussion.
Thank you very much, Jude. Notice that we've got Gail has joined us. Finally got out how to do it. Hi, Gail. Do you want to just say hello and a little bit about yourself? Because obviously the other presenters may not have come across you before. You need your camera pulled down a bit, yeah?
Hi, I'm Gail. First of all, I want to say I hate technology. It took me ages to get on, but finally I did. Basically, I've been doing health and safety consultancy, environmental health, for the last 10 years, but I faced redundancy before Christmas. I've always taught for Harrogate College, food safety and health and safety, so I'm going it alone, which Steve, I have to say, is my mentor and my guru. who has actually managed to get me this far on the computer, which I can't believe. So yeah, so that was really interesting. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, then, Gail. So everyone knows everyone else now. David, comments on the presentation?
Well, first of all, well done, Gail, on getting on the computer. I've had exactly the same problem, and how ironic. I taught. I learned computer studies in 1966 in Richmond in North Yorkshire when I was at school, and I still don't know how to work the blooming things. Excellent presentation, Jude. Thank you very much. This whole thing of hand washing, it's a devil of a job to get people to take seriously. Because it ends up with everyone nods and says, oh, this is how I wash my hands, and then like many other food hygiene topics, they go back to work and the habit disappears. And I think before we start saying they should do, if we look at ourselves, my wife's not listening now, but if she was, she'd say I'm one of the most unhygienic environmental health practitioners she knows. When we get in our own environment, we do forget the habits ourselves. Which is why participative hand wash training is the sort of new approach, which is not just showing the video on 3 people using the ultraviolet, but everybody practicing the physical technique.
Yeah. I agree, Steve. What I wanted to really show in there was that it's not a one-size-fits-all as well. It sort of depends on your circumstances. I think there's so many, you mustn't do this, you must do that. Well, actually, it sort of depends sometimes as to what you're handling and the nature of your business and things like that. So I just wanted to try and bring out a few of the things that maybe trainers come up across in this as well. Yeah,
I must admit, on the nail brush side, in the last 20 years, I've only seen one kitchen to have nail brushes actually on the sink, and unfortunately it was in the right state, and that's the problem. It's not the fact that they are useful. I mean, at home I use nail brushes if I've been handling raw chicken or been out in the garden.
You have to and use it properly. That's the problem.
Yeah, if I had one, I must admit my gut feeling would be not to have it on display, to have it cleaned, disinfected on a regular basis, and have it in my drawer in my office, out of the kitchen, and use it out of the kitchen, just to get rid of the heavy debris, and when I go in the kitchen, wash it. But that's just me. Everyone's got their own thoughts on that.
It's an emotive one, but the studies quite clearly show that it removes by friction very well. So you've got 2 issues. You've sort of got the problem with the build-up of bacteria potentially and biofilms. I don't know whether you can see it at the moment, but I've got a pot on my hand. I broke my wrist, and I'm sure there's a biofilm going on in that palm. I really need to scrape it off.
I mean, we were told in the health service, just before I left the health service, we used to use single-use disposable surgeon's ones, and before that we had them autoclaved. Every time you used it once, you took it in the bin, it gets autoclaved. But we were even told we had to stop using them. So, what's your thoughts on that one, Gail?
With regards to the
nail brushes.
Oh, with regards, yeah, I have seen. I do see them because, of course, there was the myth that you couldn't have them, then you could have them, then you couldn't. So I do see them on my travels. However, yeah, they're normally dirty, I'd say.
Yeah, normally quite gross, the ones I've seen. What's your experience?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when we used to inspect them in environmental health, we'd always be very cynical about the fact that they were going to cause more harm than good. But if you're going to assess the risk here, there's a great piece of research here. You mentioned raw chicken. I think if you talk about specifics, you can analyse it. Raw chicken, is it better to handle raw chicken and then wash your hands using a nail brush? Or is it better to handle raw chicken with disposable gloves? Now, that's a piece of research as to what actually reduces the contamination overall, because I don't know the answer.
No, I don't, but it'd be a good piece of research. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the studies that have been shown have shown that if you use the nail brush effectively in the right way, then it's great. But you need the right nail brush, and you need to make sure people know how to use it and when to use it, as opposed to putting it in. So a lot of companies just go, well, we'd rather not bother risking it, I think. So yeah, it would be a good piece of
Sorry. The only time we insisted in enforcement in nail brushes was when there was a suspected food poisoning outbreak at a premises. What we said was, whether we know it's you or not, we want all your staff issued with nail brushes, their own nail brushes, in a plastic bag to use personally while we sort it out. That's the only time we insist on them.
Yeah. One of the things that I always come across is when you look at, for caterers, if I'm teaching a food safety course, on the Safer Food, Better Business, on the first page at the top it says, do you train your staff to wash hands? And people always say yes. And I've yet to see anyone actually train the staff, or even put it as a record of training in the back. And so what I've been doing, a little personal crusade, is that I've got a friend of mine to do that. I don't know if you can see it or not, but basically it's a bag which I wouldn't expect them to keep in the kitchen because it's linen. But in the bag, we've got one of these, I'm sure you've seen them before, these UV lights, and we have a couple of pots of the UV powder. And what I do on my courses is, I don't know, can you see how that sort of glows in the dark and it's sort of all, where is it? Can you see that? And then when you transfer that to somewhere like on there, and what we do with that is we just let them put a dab of this stuff on the fingers, and then physically ask them to wash their hands. Now, once they've washed their hands, we then show the light on it again. So we show them the light on the hands where wherever the gel is. We ask them to wash their hands naturally, so that they do it as they would in the workplace. We then come back and see the areas that they've missed, and then, and only then, do we show them how to wash their hands with a video and with things like what we include in the chart. I normally do a smaller version of that sort of one, which I've had an artist friend of mine draw the hand motions and whatever, and it's based very loosely on the World Health one. And in the pack as well, it tells people how they can run that hand wash session. We normally sling in the usual thing that we've seen before, the book, and that way they can then keep that in their office, in the chef's office or the manager's office, and when they get new staff they can train them to wash their hands, and periodically they can do a refresher. And I think that's one way of making people realise by actually physically doing that themselves, rather than just demonstrating on a video.
And I think this topic of hand washing is one of the few that lends itself to the embarrassment technique. Certainly on my food safety audits, one of my criteria is to measure how long it is from me arriving at a food premises to seeing anybody wash their hands.
Yeah.
Usually horrifically embarrassing. Making sure, of course, I wash my hands straight away. But it's usually a huge amount of time before you catch somebody washing their hands. And when you tell the chef, I was in your kitchen 45 minutes before anybody washed their hands. Oh, no, no, no. And, oh, yes, yes, yes. And I think we do have to embarrass people about it, because the other way is patronising. If we lecture it, we shouldn't have to lecture it. It should be ordinary habits. And the best way, I think, is to embarrass people in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
I think you're right, David, as well. Other issues are things like, well, hold on, the water's still cold, so nobody's run this tap today. I'm the first one. It's empty. Oh, look, it's full of something. So how's anyone washing their hands? And I think those are the sorts of things that people need to know, that they're being looked at and checked on. Unfortunately, you're right. It's one of those things that I think people know they should do, but just don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean...
Can I just put in 1 second and just say, in my most recent audit, I've made it sort of my mission to look at hand washing, and if you look at the underside of hand wash dispensers, they clean the fronts of them, but the underside of them are always absolutely disgustingly filthy. They don't clean them.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a massive risk of cross-contamination there.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was going to say was one of the issues that you've got is, for a manager, they can actually monitor the use of hand wash soap. And again, if you walk in a kitchen and the sink's actually dusty, then you know it's not being used properly. But one of the local head chefs from one of the local hospitals came on a level 3 course, and he says, well, how can I monitor hand washing? I said, well, it's quite simple. You just go sit in your office for 30 minutes, at whatever period of time, and just sit and look at the hand wash basins and see who uses them. See who comes back from the break without washing their hands, etc., etc. And when you see them, you take them again politely. Don't go too hard, but ask them if they realise what they've done, because 9 times out of 10 they won't even be aware. No one else want to comment on anything on this?
Well, I think the most effective thing to do with hand washing is to link it to a higher level, to link it to HACCP, and link it to food safety culture, and not dumb it down too much. It'd be, oh, you're going to say hand washing, hand washing. Well, it actually is a critical control.
Yes.
And I haven't often seen, and people can correct me, I have not often seen CCPs be identified as at hand washing stations. Maybe they're normally about the food process. Nothing wrong with stepping off the food process, identifying the hand wash station as a CCP that is regularly monitored and has corrective actions. And I think then we could give it a proper level of importance in the food safety control system. There's an idea for a Tuesday evening.
Interesting.
I'm not sure about that. I have to say, because it's not an actual point, is it? That's the problem, because it's not a step in. It should be a step in the process, but it's not an actual step in the food process. So it's a bit more.
But if you read the Codex Alimentarius, it says that the system should be sympathetic to the business being considered. So yes, I'm going to argue it's a CCP.
Let you in. More in catering, I think, maybe than manufacturing. I think they'd struggle in manufacturing with identifying, unless you go to something like ISO and maybe the 22000, because then you've got operational prerequisites.
I'm going to blog about this one now, Jude. You've got me going now. I'm going to blog about how to bring hand washing in as a legitimate CCP.
I once went to a company just off it a little bit, but still onto hand hygiene, who actually had blood as a CCP, which I struggled with a bit. It meant that if the blood got in the food, and I was like, well, that's not a point, and I'm struggling with that. But what they meant was it was absolutely critical for people to put a plaster on. But I did have to say I thought that needed to be in a prerequisite programme, not in the actual HACCP as such, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm still going to blog about it.
We'll look forward to that one, David. Look forward to it. So, are there any other areas that we need to sort of think about tonight on that sort of hand washing process? And
yeah, I wasn't sure that people involved in the Hangout know this, but perhaps anybody watching afterwards might not know, is that the recommendation for hand washing training is now every 3 months.
Right.
That's a recommendation from the NHS and FSA guidance, and it's participative hand wash training. So just in case anyone's missed that.
And get the hand wash gel out and let them use all the stuff and whatever. And
that means everyone, not like the old fire extinguisher training where one person sets it off and the rest say, oh, that was interesting. Participative hand wash training is everybody washing their hands and being observed by a supervisor. I
mean, I must admit, talking about fire safety, when I deliver my fire warden training, the accredited one, they all get you to the. We use CO2 and water. We don't plenty of powder and the foam. But yeah, you're right. They've got to be actually hands-on doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm going through an audit, the first thing I do is I do what we call a user journey on washing your hands. So I walk in the kitchen with my white clothes and hat, whatever. Go to the sink and check if everything's there and in place. Because chances are that there's things missing, or maybe there's no foot operating bin or whatever. One of the things that I can't remember where I got it from now, but to wash your hands thoroughly on what people in America would call a second stage wash, a thorough one, takes a minute. Now, if you sing to yourself "Happy Birthday to You" 6 times, that's about a minute.
Yeah, and there's so much guidance based. I mean, Jude, you had to do the same thing. It's at least 10 seconds for vigorous lathering. We know that, but I think the difficulty here, people are they're going to a time and they're not bothering about the effectiveness. What we mean by the time is, if you're going to wash them effectively, we know it will take about a minute, but we're not saying you must wash your hands for a minute. What we're saying is you must wash them effectively, and that's where the physical practice comes in. I think that's the thing.
Yeah. actually the physical practice. I agree with you, David. I also think that we get hung up on this happy birthday or whatever, but it is the way we do it. I mean, I agree with the happy birthdays. It's quite a good way of reminding people. So it's a great reminder. But they need to be washing the hands and not just sitting with them half under the tap, which is what I'm obviously doing with this hand at the moment. I don't think it's been washed properly for weeks.
Yeah. The last time I remember a couple of years ago, I was at one of the National Trust properties in the catering department, and the manager there the following day rang me up and said, "Help, Steve, they're driving me mad, singing Happy Birthday." They're doing it out loud, not just themselves. So, what's your thoughts, Gail? Just to sum up, we'll do a bit of a round robin, summing up, and any points you'd like to make to people, because we've been at this now for just over half an hour.
I have used your hand exercise because obviously you gave me the germ powder, etc. I think that's brilliant because people always try and say, oh, we'll prove her wrong and we'll wash them properly, and they still miss areas. So I think that is a really, really good demonstration of how people don't wash their hands effectively. I think, like I say, definitely in my most recent audits, the underside of hand soap dispensers and hand towel dispensers have been really dirty. They get missed. And yeah, you know, I've been to staff toilets recently where there isn't even any hand soap, and it actually makes, I always say, as drama queen as it sounds, I always say it makes me feel physically sick to think that people can't wash their hands when they've been to the toilet. So yeah, all those things, and I just think it's so important. Obviously I'm going to be writing my own food safety audit, hopefully pulling out the best bits of my old company, and yeah, hand washing of course is #1 priority.
Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. I'll come back to you in a minute. David?
I did say I was going to blog about it, and you got me going. I love these hangouts because you always go away thinking, why is it I hadn't thought about that before, so thank you very much, Gail, for the underside of soap dispensers and whatever. Yeah, no, I'm going to do a couple of blogs about it now, and we're doing the hand wash stuff all this year on the CIH food safety updates for trainers. It's one of our key themes this year, and I might try and write a song about it as well. How's that?
Yeah. The thing about that as well is from a due diligence point of view, if you get inspected and someone says to you, "You trainers have to wash their hands," and you can point to the kit and say, "Yeah, we use that." And what I've done to it, I've not actually made them to make money, because I don't want to be a hand wash salesman, hand washing kit salesman. But what I've done is it for a sort of a cheap resource for a very affordable resource for my customers, so that when they get inspected, the HO says, "Do you wash your staff wash their hands?" Say, "Yes, we do it. You know, we're always doing refreshes, etc., etc." So it doesn't do me any harm either because it's got my logo on it. But it does demonstrate very clearly that an organisation is taking hand washing seriously. Jude?
I think we could go on forever just on hand wash, which shows just how important it is. It's probably been the hangout that we've had the most to talk about.
Yeah.
There's lots more, and I think it'd be really useful if maybe not the next one, but in a bit later on, we did a little bit more and maybe just took one of the little bbits, like a nail brush or the soap or the temperature or just the procedure, and went into more depth on that. Especially as this is really meant for trainers as well, more than anybody, just to give them some background knowledge and underpinning knowledge. I think it'd be a really useful thing to continue with. So I thought I'd just start off with a real basic summary of some of the questions I get asked.
So, just to say, we're finishing now. This will be available on YouTube later on. So it's good night from me. Jude?
Good night.
Gail?
Thank you for letting me join in. It's been great.
Okay, and David?
Happy hand washing, everybody.
Okay. If you stay on in the green room when we're finished, we'll just have a little chat just to discuss future ones. Okay, bye.